Excuse number five that airlines use to justify why they don't take action on contrails. Operational implementation is too complex. So altering flight paths to avoid contrail formation would complicate planning, increase fuel use, disrupt schedules, lead to delays, and add costs. It would require big changes to operational procedures and the implementation of tools we don't have yet. It's too complex. What do you say to that?
So, I mean, the first is that to airlines that do say this, my advice would be participate in contrail trials. I think that one issue here is, I mean, undoubtedly, contrail avoidance is more complicated than not doing contrail avoidance. That's certainly true. But how much more complicated is a guess unless you're heavily involved in trying to do contrail avoidance. And actually, one of the reasons we're advocating for airspace trials is we don't know how complicated it is under certain conditions. So, for instance, we don't know how much avoiding a greater and greater share of contrails is as, say, traffic congestion goes up at different times of the year. And so one thing we need to do in those trials is work out the knock-on effect onto those things. So I would say the debate on this is actually relatively uninformed on both sides of the debate at the moment, in the sense that there's one side says, oh, we could never do contrail avoidance, the congestion would be a nightmare. I think this may be coming up, conversely, the other side says, oh, it's no problem at all. And I'd say that at the moment we've done lots of individual flight trials, but without those airspace-wide trials, we don't know exactly where the trade-offs are with that. So I would encourage airlines that are concerned about this to participate in trials to help understand how much of an issue it is. Speaking to airlines or operators who have done trials, I would say in general, they are pleasantly surprised by how minimal a bunch of the changes are, not least because the number of flights that are affected tends to be relatively minimal. And so it's clearly not an order of magnitude change on complexity. But the second issue here is that aviation is quite a complicated business to begin with. It feels like a very strange excuse for aviation to say this is a bit too complicated. This is an industry that flies, billions of passengers a year around the planet, literally hurtling through the air at just under the speed of sound with a kind of unbelievable safety record. So the idea that aviation can't figure out moving a few planes up and down a little bit 5% of the time seems to me to be a bit of a weak excuse for a problem as large as contrails. So it's also not really an excuse anyway, in the sense that just because it's a bit complicated doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it.